son demanded $5,000 a month in rent. While I juggled 3 jobs, he and my daughter-in-law enjoyed a life of ease. One night, I dropped a plate by accident. She looked at me and sneered, "You're nothing but a useless old woman." That was the moment I chose to walk away from them forever. I'm glad you're here with me today. Stay until the end and let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story reaches. My name is Della. At 63 years old, I thought I understood what exhaustion was. I didn't. Every morning at 4:30 a.m., the alarm dragged me out of my son Randall's old twin bed, a room I once decorated with dinosaurs when he was a boy. Now he and his wife, Oilia, occupied the master suite of the very home I had given him outright after my husband passed, a home that was once mortgage-free but somehow became my prison. $5,000 a month. That's what my own son charged me to live there. I told myself it was temporary, just until I recovered from Harold's crushing medical bills. But temporary stretched into almost a year of endless labor. My days blurred together, morning shifts at the grocery store, afternoons cleaning other people's houses, and nights waiting tables at the diner. Every dollar went straight into Randall's pocket. While I lived on scraps, even coffee had to be made in silence because Oilia decided that brewing it before 8 a.m. was selfish. She'd never worked a day in her life, but she criticized everything from my old Honda to the sound of a coffee maker. One afternoon, after 12 straight hours on my feet, I came home and saw the evidence of their luxury, a pile of takeout boxes from the most expensive Italian restaurant in town. The bill, $127, more than I earned in a full day at the grocery store, gone in a single meal. I stood there, trembling with hunger and fatigue, when the plate slipped from my hands and shattered on the floor. The sound brought Randall storming into the kitchen, irritation written across his face. Before I could explain, Oilia swept in wearing a silk robe and dripping disdain. "Seriously? We can't have one peaceful afternoon without you breaking something," she hissed. I bled from a shard of porcelain in my palm as I scrambled to clean it. My voice cracked. "I'll replace it, I promise." Her laugh was sharp and merciless. "Replace it with what money? You can't even keep up with rent." That was the moment something in me broke, not the plate, not the glass, but me. I looked up at my son, hoping, just hoping, that he would defend me, that he would tell his wife she had gone too far. Instead, Randall folded his arms, his eyes sliding away from mine. "She's right, Mom. You need to be more careful. We can't keep replacing things you break." Something inside me went still. We can't afford it? I was the only one in that house working, the only one paying the bills. Oilia leaned closer, her whisper sharper than any shout. "You're nothing but a clumsy old woman who can't even handle the simplest tasks anymore." She let the words hang before striking the final blow. "You're useless, and frankly, we're tired of cleaning up after you." The only sound left in the room was the tick of the wall clock. Randall said nothing. My own son let his wife strip away what little dignity I had left. Slowly, I rose to my feet, my knees aching, ceramic shards digging into my bleeding hand. I looked at both of them, my son, now a stranger, and the woman who had turned him against me. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "You're right, I am tired of making messes." And with that, I walked past them, past Oilia's smug little smile, past Randall's silence. In my room, I pulled out the old suitcase from under the bed. This time, my hands didn't tremble. I packed only the essentials, a few clothes, my medications, the photographs that still mattered. After my late shift at the diner, I came home to a dark, quiet house. They were upstairs, safe and comfortable in their bed, while I carried the weight of their luxury. Quietly, I moved like a shadow, gathering the last of my belongings. On the kitchen table, I left an envelope with the rent money I'd set aside for next week. Let them have it. It would be the last dime they ever got from me. Loading my car under the cover of night, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: relief. The cool air touched my skin like freedom. I didn't leave a note. What was left to say to people who only saw me as a wallet? By 2 a.m., I was sitting in a motel room that smelled of bleach and old stories, still wearing my diner uniform. The mattress sagged, the air conditioner rattled, but to me it was paradise. I stared at a napkin I'd tucked away weeks ago. Margaret from the diner had scribbled down a number for me. Her friend's mother-in-law had a small apartment for rent. Quiet, simple, landlord's fare if you pay on time, she'd said. Back then, I didn't believe I'd ever be brave enough to call. But bravery, I was learning, sometimes looks a lot like desperation dressed as hope. I dialed. On the fourth ring, a rough voice answered. Yeah? Hi. Sorry for the late hour. I'm calling about the apartment. Margaret Rodriguez gave me your number. Lady, it's 2 a.m. I know, I'm sorry, I need a place to live. I can pay the first month's rent right now. A pause. Then softer. You running from something? Not something. Someone. My own family. After another pause, his voice came back. Been there. Meet me at 412 Maple Street, 8 o'clock. Bring first month's rent and a $500 deposit. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my heart racing. I'd just found a place to live at 2 in the morning. It would take nearly all my savings, but freedom has a price. By sunrise, I was outside 412 Maple Street, envelope of cash in hand. The building was old but cared for, with a small garden blooming out front. A broad-shouldered man in his 60s stepped out. You the lady from last night? Yes, Della Morrison. He studied me for a moment. You look like someone who's been through it. Something like that, I said. He showed me upstairs to a modest one-bedroom apartment. Small living room, a narrow kitchen, a simple bedroom, but sunlight poured in through the windows, and it was mine. Every inch of it was mine. It's perfect, I whispered, meaning every word. Frank handed me the keys. First rule, he said firmly. What happens in your apartment stays in your apartment. I don't get involved in tenant business. For the first time in nearly a year, I felt safe. Frank laid down the last 2 rules with the same steady tone as before. Rent's due on the 1st. No exceptions. And third, take care of this place. It'll take care of you. I handed him the envelope of cash and signed the simplest lease I'd ever seen. No credit check, no references. Just a handshake with a man who seemed to understand that sometimes people need a clean slate, no questions asked. By noon, I'd bought the basics. An air mattress, sheets, a few dishes and groceries I picked out just for me. For the first time in months, I wasn't worried about what Randall preferred or what Oilia might mock. I even bought ice cream. When had I last done that, chosen something just because it made me happy? I was unpacking when my phone lit up. Randall's name flashed on the screen and my stomach clenched. They'd discovered I was gone. The ringing wouldn't stop. 38 missed calls by nightfall, from numbers I recognized and some I didn't. Friends of theirs, probably, enlisted to hunt me down. I didn't answer. Instead, I sat cross-legged on my air mattress, eating ice cream straight from the tub, savoring a silence so sweet it felt like luxury. No Oilia barking about the coffee maker, no demands for rent, no one reminding me I was useless. Just quiet. The voicemails started rolling in by dinner. I ignored most, but curiosity made me listen to a few. Randall's voice, first angry, clipped. Mom, where are you? Call me back right now, this is ridiculous. Then Oilia, trying to layer fake concern over her irritation. Della, honey, we're worried about you. Please come home so we can talk. Randall again, now with panic creeping in. Mom, seriously, I've been to all your jobs. Nobody's seen you. Just call me back, okay? I deleted every message before it ended. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about losing their safety net. The next morning, I made 2 calls of my own to quit the grocery store and the diner. I'd keep the house cleaning jobs. They were flexible, and my body could still manage them. For the first time in months, I didn't wake at 4:30 a.m. For the first time in months, I breathed. Later that day, as I was hanging thrifted curtains, I froze at the sound of heavy footsteps on the stairs. My heart raced. Had Randall found me? I peeked through the peephole. Not him. Frank. He knocked softly. "Mrs. Morrison, you all right? Some guy's been driving around asking questions about the new tenants." I opened the door. "What kind of questions?" "Description matched you. Said he was looking for his mother." Frank's face was unreadable, but his eyes were sharp. "Told him I don't know nothing about nobody's mother, but I figured you should know." I whispered, "Thank you," meaning it more than he could know. Frank paused before leaving. "My own kids tried to put me in a home after my wife died. Said I couldn't take care of myself." He met my eyes. "Sometimes family ain't the ones you're related to. Sometimes it's the people who respect you enough to let you live your own life." That night, I sipped good tea I'd never have afforded back in Randall's house and looked out at the quiet street. 43 missed calls sat on my phone, but the number had stopped climbing. Maybe they'd finally gotten the message, or maybe they were planning their next move. For once, I wasn't afraid. I had a roof over my head, work I could manage, silence that belonged to me. At 63, I was finally learning to take care of myself. 2 weeks later, while folding Mrs. Chen's laundry, she mentioned a "for sale" sign that had gone up nearby. She gave the address, and my hand stilled on the towel. My old house. Randall's house. "The realtor said the owners are behind on their mortgage," Mrs. Chen said casually. "Such a shame. It's a beautiful place, but they're asking way more than it's worth these days." I folded the rest in silence, but my mind was racing. 2 weeks without my rent money, and they were already trying to sell. Either they'd been drowning in debt, or they'd built a life so inflated by my labor that losing me meant collapse. That evening, I couldn't resist. I drove past the house for the first time since leaving. The lawn was overgrown, the flower beds overrun with weeds, newspapers strewn across the driveway. The "for sale" sign stood crooked in the dirt. It looked abandoned, neglected, just like I had been. My phone had finally quieted to only a few calls a day, which I ignored. But that night, as I ate a dinner I'd actually enjoyed cooking in my own apartment, it rang again. This time, it wasn't Randall, it wasn't Oilia. It was Betty, my old neighbor. Against my better judgment, I answered, "Della? Oh, honey, thank God you picked up." Betty's voice was thick with concern. "I've been worried sick about you." "I'm fine, Betty. Actually, I'm better than fine." "But where are you? Randall's been beside himself. He came by asking if I'd seen you. He looked awful. Lost weight, dark circles under his eyes." A year ago, that news would have sent me racing back to take care of him. Now, I only felt a distant curiosity about what he was telling people. "What exactly did he say?" Betty hesitated. "He said you've been acting strange, that he's worried about your mental health, that you disappeared without a word and they're afraid you might hurt yourself." The audacity stole my breath. After charging me $5,000 a month and letting his wife call me useless, he was now painting me as unstable to excuse my absence. "Betty," I said carefully, "did Randall mention that he was charging me $5,000 a month to live in my own house, the house I gave him free and clear?" Silence. "Did he tell you I was working 3 jobs to pay that rent while he and Oilia didn't work at all?" I had no idea," Betty whispered. "Of course you didn't, because that version doesn't make Randall look like the concerned son." After I hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Genuine amusement. Randall was scrambling, spinning stories to preserve his image, while his world cracked. The next few days brought more revelations. Mrs. Rodriguez, one of my cleaning clients, mentioned that her daughter worked at the bank where Randall and Oilia had their mortgage. "She probably shouldn't have told me this," Mrs. Rodriguez said conspiratorially. "But your son came in last week practically begging for a payment extension. My daughter said his wife was crying about a family emergency." Family emergency. That's what they were calling my refusal to bankroll their life. "The bank gave them 30 days, she continued. "But between you and me, I don't think they're going to find that kind of money. The payment's over $4,000 a month." I did the math. Their mortgage payment was almost exactly what they'd been charging me. No wonder they'd been desperate to keep me trapped. A week later, I was grocery shopping when I literally ran into Oilia at the checkout line. She looked nothing like the perfectly polished woman who'd once called me useless. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her hair pulled into a sloppy ponytail, dark circles smudged beneath her eyes. She spotted me before I could turn away. Her face flickered surprise, relief, calculation. "Della!" she exclaimed, rushing over with a practiced smile. "We've been so worried about you. Where have you been staying?" I kept loading my groceries onto the conveyor belt. "Somewhere I don't have to pay $5,000 a month for the privilege of being insulted." Her face flushed. "Look, maybe we all said things we didn't mean. Randall's been sick with worry. He barely sleeps anymore." I turned to face her fully, noting how she couldn't meet my eyes. "Is that before or after you put the house up for sale?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. "Who told you about that?" "Word gets around, especially when you're asking twice what the house is worth." Oilia's mask slipped completely. The fake concern vanished, replaced by the cold desperation I remembered. "You can't just abandon your family over one little argument," she hissed, glancing around. "Randall is your son. You have responsibilities." "You're right," I said evenly. "I do have responsibilities to myself." I paid for my groceries and walked away, leaving her standing there speechless. In my car, my hands trembled from adrenaline, but underneath the nerves was something stronger: pride. I had stood up to her, and it felt incredible. That night, the calls began again. Randall, Oilia, unknown numbers. I let them all go to voicemail, but this time I listened to a few. Randall's voice no longer angry, but pleading. "Mom, please, we need to talk. I know things got out of hand, but we're family. Families work through problems together." Oilia, trying a new tactic. "Della, I want to apologize. I was stressed about money and took it out on you. It wasn't fair. Please come home so we can fix this." Then Randall again, and I could hear tears in his voice. "Mom, I don't know what to do. Everything's falling apart. I can't lose the house. Please just call me back." I felt the old tug of maternal instinct, the urge to fix his problems, to sacrifice myself yet again. But then I remembered the takeout containers worth more than my daily wages. I remembered being called useless. I remembered working myself to exhaustion while they slept until noon. I deleted the messages and made myself a cup of tea. 2 days later, Frank knocked on my door, his brow furrowed. "Mrs. Morrison, that son of yours was here again. This time he had some woman with him, crying and carrying on. They wanted to know which apartment you were in." My stomach tightened. "Did you tell them?" Frank's eyes were sharp. "Hell no." Frank's warning replayed in my head long after he left. "They'll try anything to get their cash cow back." That phrase hit like ice water. I wasn't a mother to them, not really. I was a resource, a paycheck, nothing more. "What should I do?" I asked him, almost like a child asking for directions. "Got any proof?" he said. "Bank statements, receipts, records of what you've been paying?" I nodded. I had it all. Rent payments, the endless bills, evidence of the 3 jobs that nearly broke me. "Then keep it safe," Frank said, "and make sure people know you're fine. Don't let them twist your story." That night I wrote letters. Not to Randall, not to Oilia, to Betty, to a few neighbors, to people who knew me. Calm, clear, factual. I explained where I was, that I was safe, capable, and living on my own terms. I gave them my new address and number. I asked them, if ever needed, to stand witness that I was sound of mind. Sealing those envelopes, I felt something shift. I wasn't just running anymore, I was fighting back. For weeks they'd tried to brand me as confused, fragile, unstable. But I was proving step by step that I was exactly where I belonged. Free. I thought I was done being shocked. Then came Sarah. I was at a small cafe down the street, savoring a latte and a newspaper simple joys I'd forgotten existed when a woman approached. Mid-30s, kind eyes, hesitant smile. "Excuse me, are you Mrs. Morrison, Randall's mother?" I looked up, cautious. "Yes." "Do we know each other?" "I'm Sarah Mitchell. Well, Williams now." I dated Randall in college. She gestured to the empty chair. May I? I almost declined. The last thing I needed was more drama, but something in her expression concern mixed with determination made me nod. She sat and leaned forward. I've heard things, through friends, that you left, that Randall's been telling people you're unwell, that you vanished and everyone's worried you might hurt yourself. My jaw clenched, but she shook her head quickly. That's not the woman I remember. You were always sharp, always put together. That story didn't fit. Her eyes hardened. But this one does. Randall manipulates the people who love him to get what he wants, because that's exactly what he did to me. For the next hour, Sarah unraveled the side of Randall I had never let myself see. He'd convinced her to take out student loans in her name, spent them on himself. He'd isolated her from her friends with drama, then made himself her only lifeline. He made her feel guilty for wanting anything of her own. The last straw, she said, her hands tightening around her coffee cup, was when he tried to get me to beg my parents for money. Claimed it was for an investment. It was actually to cover a gambling debt. My throat went dry. He was gambling in college? All the time. Poker, sports bets, even online games. He was slick at hiding it, but even better at making someone else pay the price. Her expression softened as she looked at me. Mrs. Morrison, I'm sorry. When I heard what he was doing to you, it was like déjà vu. The rent, the insults. It was my story all over again. I sat in that cafe long after Sarah left, mind spinning. My son, the boy I had raised to be honest and hardworking, had been deceiving and exploiting people for over a decade, and I had been his latest victim. That evening, I did something I'd been avoiding. I drove past the house again. The yard was worse than before, overgrown, untended. The lawn service truck I'd once paid for was gone, the flower beds choked with weeds. But one thing stood out. A sleek, luxury SUV sat in the driveway, a car far beyond Randall's means. Curiosity pulled me to the curb across the street. I waited. 20 minutes later, Oilia walked out. Not alone. At her side was a man I didn't recognize, well-dressed, designer watch glinting under the streetlight. She leaned into him, kissed him passionately, then watched him drive off. My son's wife wasn't just desperate. She was cheating and with someone who had money. Suddenly, her expensive dinners and endless new clothes made sense. They hadn't come from Randall's paycheck. They'd come from her double life. The way Oilia had pushed Randall to charge me more rent, insisting they needed it for household expenses, now looked like a chess move in a much bigger game. Sitting in my car outside the house where I'd once been so miserable, I felt something unexpected. Pity. Not for myself, but for Randall. His wife was cheating on him, his financial life was collapsing, and he was too deep in his own denial to see it. The next day, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my sister Margaret in Phoenix. "Della, oh my God," she said, "I've been wondering about you. It's been what, 2 years?" "Something like that," I admitted. Shame had kept me silent all that time. "Margaret, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. When Randall was younger, did you ever notice anything concerning about his behavior?" There was a long pause on the line. "Della, honey, why are you asking?" "Please," I pressed, "it's important." She sighed. "You want the truth?" "Yes. I always thought there was something off about how he treated you. Even as a teenager, he knew exactly how to make you feel guilty to get what he wanted, and the way he talked about money, like everyone owed him something. But you were so proud of him. He was your only child. I figured it wasn't my place." When we hung up, the realization hit me. People had been seeing the problem for years. I had been too close, too invested in being a good mother to recognize my son was weaponizing my love against me. That afternoon, I was vacuuming Mrs. Patterson's living room when she began chatting. "My grandson works at the casino on the other side of town," she said. "He was telling me about some regulars who lose thousands every week. One couple in particular. He swears it's that young man who's been driving around asking about his missing mother." The vacuum handle froze in my hands. What did he say about them? The man plays poker mostly, loses big. But here's the strange part. When he wins, it's the woman who collects the money, and she never sticks around to watch him play. My grandson thinks she's using the husband's gambling as a way to move money from somewhere else. My heart thudded. Oilia wasn't just cheating. She was using Randall's addiction as a front for something else entirely. That evening, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I called Betty, my old neighbor. "Betty, it's Della. I need you to do something for me, and please, no questions." "Of course, honey. What do you need?" "I need you to keep an eye on my old house. If you see Randall leave alone without Oilia, call me immediately." "Della, what's going on?" "I can't explain everything right now, but Randall's in more trouble than he knows, and I think it's time someone told him the truth about his wife." 3 days later, Betty called. Randall had just left alone, looking haggard, his shoulders slumped. She'd overheard him in the driveway, begging someone on the phone for a loan extension. I drove to the house, my heart hammering. I'd avoided this confrontation for over a month, but I couldn't let my son destroy himself completely, even if he'd been willing to let me destroy myself for him. I knocked. Oilia opened the door. Her face flickered. Surprise, calculation, then false relief. "Della, thank God you're okay. Randall's been so worried. Where is he?" "He had to run errands," she said sweetly. "Come in, please. We have so much to talk about." I stepped into the house that had once been my home. Everything looked the same. The furniture I'd helped pay for still gleamed, but there was a hollowness now, a sense of rot beneath the surface. "Coffee?" Oilia asked, voice honeyed. "I know about Marcus." Her face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about. The man with the expensive SUV who was here 3 nights ago, the one you kissed in the driveway while your husband was probably at the casino losing money you needed for the mortgage." Oilia's mask crumbled. Gone was the pretense of care. All that remained was cold calculation and panic. "How long have you been watching us?" "Long enough to know you've been using my son's gambling to cover your affair and probably to move money around from your boyfriend." She sank into a chair, suddenly looking older than her 32 years. "You don't understand the situation, then explain it." For a moment I thought she might, but then her expression hardened, and I saw the same woman who had called me useless, who had made my life a living hell while I paid for her comfort. "You want the truth, Della? Fine. Yes, I'm seeing Marcus. Yes, he has money, and yes, he's been helping us with some expenses. You know what else is true?" Oilia's voice had turned vicious. "Your son is a compulsive gambler who's been lying to you for years about how bad his debts are." The words landed like blows, but I kept my face neutral. "Randall owes money to people who don't accept payment plans," she hissed. "The house is just the beginning. If we don't figure something out soon, we're going to lose everything, and it might not be safe for any of us. And your solution," I said quietly, "was to bleed me dry. You're his mother. You're supposed to take care of your children." I stood, calmer than I'd felt in months. "No, Oilia, I'm supposed to love my children. I'm not supposed to enable them to destroy themselves and drag me down with them." I walked toward the door, then turned back one last time. "When Randall gets home, tell him his mother loves him. Tell him that if he wants my help, he needs to get help first, real help, and he needs to decide whether he wants to save his marriage to you or save himself, because he can't do both." I left her sitting there in the house my money had built, surrounded by expensive things I would never pay for again. It was 6:30 a.m. the following Tuesday when Randall showed up at my apartment door. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Hair unwashed, clothes rumpled, eyes full of a desperation I'd never seen before. When I opened the door, he almost collapsed against the frame. "Mom." His voice cracked on the single word. I stood there taking in the sight of my son, really seeing him for the first time in months. Beneath the stubble and exhaustion I could glimpse the boy I had raised and the hollow shell of a man who'd finally hit rock bottom. "How did you find me?" "It doesn't matter." He rubbed his face with trembling hands. "Mom, I need to talk to you. Please." Every instinct I'd built over the past 6 weeks screamed at me to close the door. I'd worked too hard for my peace to let him destroy it in one conversation, but something in his posture, the slump of his shoulders, the tremor in his fingers, made me step aside. "You have 10 minutes." He shuffled into my small living room, eyes darting over the modest space. I watched him notice the single coffee cup on the table, the book I'd been reading, the little plant I'd bought myself. It was the first time he'd seen me living for myself instead of for him. "This is where you've been?" he asked, sinking onto my second-hand couch. "This is where I live now," I said. "There's a difference." Randall looked around again, trying to process it. No expensive furniture bought with money I couldn't afford, no crushing rent, just a small, peaceful space that belonged to me. "Mom..." His voice broke. "I'm sorry. About the rent. About Oilia. About everything. I know we treated you badly. I know you have every right to hate me." I sat across from him, steady. "I don't hate you, Randall, but I don't trust you." He flinched as if I'd struck him. "I deserve that." "Yes, you do." For several minutes we sat in silence, the coffee maker gurgling softly in the kitchen. Morning traffic drifting through the window, the sounds of a normal life that didn't revolve around chaos. "Oilia told me about your conversation yesterday," he said finally. "She told me you know about Marcus. She said you threatened to expose everything unless we left you alone." I almost laughed. Even in defeat, Oilia was still rewriting the story. "Is that what you think happened?" Randall looked at me, confused. "Didn't it?" "No, Randall. I told her that if you wanted my help, you needed to get help first. Real help, and that you needed to decide whether you wanted to save your marriage or save yourself." His face crumpled. "I can't do both, can I?" The admission hung between us. For the first time in years, my son was asking me a real question, not trying to manipulate me. "What do you think?" He buried his face in his hands. "I think I've lost everything. The house, my marriage, my mother. I think I've been so focused on keeping all the plates spinning that I never stopped to ask why I was spinning them in the first place." "Why were you?" Silence. For a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he looked up, tears glistening. "Because I was scared. After Dad died and you were drowning in medical bills, I thought I had to be the man of the family. I had to take care of everything, but I didn't know how. Every time I tried to fix one problem, I created 2 more. I felt the old tug, the urge to comfort, to take his pain as my own, but I had learned to recognize that feeling. This time I stayed silent. "The gambling started as a way to make quick money," he said. "Just small bets. But when I won, it felt like I was finally good at something, like I was finally solving problems instead of creating them. And when you lost?" He gave a small broken laugh. "When I lost, I told myself it was just bad luck. That the next bet would fix everything." He gave a bitter laugh. "Do you know how much money I've lost over the past 3 years, Mom?" I shook my head, but a number had already started forming in the back of my mind. $87,000, he said flatly. "That's not counting what we borrowed against the house or the credit cards or—" He stared at his hands. "Or the $5,000 a month I was taking from you." The number hit me like a physical blow. $87,000. More than I'd earned in 2 years of working 3 jobs. "Where did Oilia fit into all this?" I asked quietly. Randall's face darkened. "At first, she was supportive. She said she understood the pressure I was under, that the gambling was just a phase. Then she started encouraging it. She'd give me money for bigger bets, saying we needed a big win to get out of debt." "Money from Marcus?" He nodded miserably. "She met him at the casino 8 months ago. He was there watching me lose. Afterwards he approached her, said he knew what it was like to be married to someone with an addiction. And you believed that?" "I wanted to," Randall whispered. "Marcus seemed like he was helping us. He gave Oilia money to invest in my gambling, but it was just more money for me to lose." The whole sick arrangement came into focus. Marcus was paying to have access to Oilia, disguising it as charity. Oilia was getting attention and money while posing as the devoted wife, and Randall was getting enough to keep gambling while everyone told him how much they cared. "When did you figure it out?" "Yesterday," he said, wiping his eyes. "After you left, I came home and found them together, not just talking, together." The pain in his voice was raw. For a moment, I felt genuine sympathy. But sympathy and enabling weren't the same thing. "What did you do?" "I told them both to get out of my house." Oilia laughed, said it wasn't my house anymore, said Marcus has been making the mortgage payments for the past 4 months. He looked up at me with hollow eyes. "She said if I kicked her out, Marcus would foreclose immediately. She's been using you this whole time." He gave a sad, humorless smile. "We've all been using each other, Mom. Oilia used me to justify taking Marcus's money. I used you to pay for everything else. Marcus used both of us to get what he wanted from her. The only person who wasn't using anyone was you. And we treated you the worst." I walked to the window and looked out at the street where I'd built my new life. Behind me, I heard Randall crying, not the manipulative tears I'd seen so many times before, but the broken sobs of a man finally seeing himself clearly. "What do you want from me, Randall?" "I want my mom back," he whispered. "I want to be the son you deserved instead of the one who almost killed you with his problems." I turned around to face him. "Then what are you going to do about it?" He looked up, and for the first time in our conversation, I saw something besides desperation. I saw determination. "I'm going to get help, real help, not just promises." He pulled a crumpled paper from his pocket. "It's a 12-week residential program. I'll lose the house while I'm there, but I'll lose it anyway if I don't go. And Oilia, she can have Marcus. She can have whatever life she thinks his money will buy her, but she can't have any more of mine." I searched his face for signs of the manipulation I'd learned to recognize, but what I saw was different. Raw honesty, genuine remorse, the first flicker of self-awareness I'd seen in years. "If you do this, really do this, it doesn't mean we go back to the way things were," I said finally. "I won't be your safety net. I won't pay your bills. I won't clean up your messes." "I know," he said. "And if I relapse, if I lie to you again, if I try to pull you back into my problems, I understand you'll walk away. No second chances." I sat back down, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Cautious hope. "Then yes," I said quietly, "you can have your mom back, but this time you get the real version, the one who loves you enough to let you fail if that's what it takes for you to succeed." For the first time in months, my son smiled, and it looked genuine. 6 months later, I was in the garden behind my apartment building, tending to my tomato plants, when I heard footsteps on the path. I looked up and barely recognized the man walking toward me. It was Randall. But not the broken, desperate figure who had stood at my door that morning in March. This version of my son carried himself differently, straighter, calmer. His hair was clean, his weight restored, and most importantly, his eyes were clear. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, Randall." I stood brushing soil from my gloves. "You look good." "I feel good. Really good. For the first time in years." He glanced at my garden. "Need some help with those?" "I've got it, but thank you." That had become our pattern. He offered help. Sometimes I accepted, sometimes I didn't. But the difference now was that he respected my answer either way. He'd learned that my independence wasn't rejection, it was survival. "How's the new job?" I asked as we settled onto the small bench by my garden. He kept a careful distance, something we'd both learned to honor. "It's good. The pay isn't much, but it's honest work. My boss says if I keep it up, there might be a supervisor spot opening next year." He was working as a clerk at a hardware store. A year ago, the job would have embarrassed him. Now it gave him pride. His manager, a recovered gambling addict himself, had taken a chance on Randall after the program. "Still going to meetings?" I asked. "Twice a week? Still working the steps?" He looked down for a moment, then added, "I wanted to tell you, I'm at step 8 now." I knew what that meant. making a list of people harmed by your addiction, becoming willing to make amends. That must be a long list, I said gently. It is, Randall admitted. He turned to me. But you're at the top. I know I've already apologized, but I want you to know I finally understand what I did to you. Not just the money, but how I made you feel like you didn't matter, like your only value was what you could give me. A tightness rose in my chest, the familiar ache of those memories. I appreciate that, I said softly. My counselor says amends aren't just about saying sorry, he continued. It's about changing behavior and accepting that some relationships might never be the same. I get that. I know I may never fully earn your trust back. Randall, I said carefully, trust isn't something you ask for. It's something you earn, one day at a time. I know, he said firmly. And I'm willing to do the work for as long as it takes. We sat in silence, watching the late afternoon sun stretch shadows across the garden. It struck me how different this conversation was from all the others we'd had over the years. No manipulation, no hidden agenda, just honesty. After a while, Randall asked quietly, "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are you happy? Really happy? Not just relieved to be away from all the chaos?" I thought about it seriously. 6 months ago, I might have said I was grateful or free, but happy? That had seemed too much to hope for. "Yes," I said, surprised at how easily the word came. "I am happy." "Good." He smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that reminded me of his boyhood. "You deserve to be happy." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text. I glanced down and couldn't help but smile. "What is it?" Randall asked. "Remember Frank, my landlord? His daughter just had a baby. He's sending pictures." I showed him the tiny newborn, wrinkled and pink, with a shock of dark hair. "You've become close with your landlord," Randall noted. "Frank's become a good friend," I said. "He teaches me how to grow vegetables. I help him with his computer when he video chats with his grandkids." What I didn't say was that it was more than just favors. Frank and I had built something rare, a companionship without debts, without keeping score. Not romance. We were both too set in our ways for that. But something real. "I'm glad you have that," Randall said quietly, and I knew he meant it. "You were alone too much when you were taking care of me." The words slipped out before I could stop them. I was alone even when I was with you. I regretted the sharpness immediately, but Randall just nodded. "Yeah," he said softly. "I know." For the first time, I believed him. 6 months later, I was in the little garden behind my apartment, dirt on my gloves and sun on my back, when I heard footsteps. It was Randall, but not the broken man who had appeared at my door in March. This Randall was almost unrecognizable. His shoulders were straighter. His eyes were clear. He carried himself with quiet humility instead of arrogance. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, Randall," I said, brushing soil from my gloves. "You look good." "I feel good. Really good. For the first time in years." We sat on the bench by my tomato plants. He told me about the hardware store job, about his meetings, about working the steps. He was at step 8 now, making amends, and when he said I was at the top of his list, I felt both the ache of old wounds and the faint warmth of hope. He asked me if I was happy, not just free, not just relieved happy. For a moment, I thought about it. 6 months ago, happiness had seemed impossible. But now? "Yes," I said. "I am happy." Later, my phone buzzed. Sarah Williams, his ex-girlfriend, calling to share good news. She'd finally gotten the teaching job she'd dreamed of. I congratulated her, promised to celebrate. Afterward, Randall admitted quietly, "I'm glad you had her. I'm glad you had people who cared about you for who you are, not what you could do for them." When he left, the sun was setting. I stayed in my garden as the stars came out, my phone buzzing again with messages. Margaret with updates about her grandkids, Mrs. Chen asking to reschedule a cleaning, Frank inviting me downstairs to watch a movie. A year ago, every call had been a demand, a guilt trip, a reminder that I existed only to solve other people's problems. Now, my phone connected me to people who truly cared. Randall had asked if I was happy, and I realized happiness didn't look like I once thought. It wasn't the rush of youth or the pride of achievement. It was quieter than that, more durable. The deep contentment of finally living an honest life. I'd spent so many years defining myself by what I could do for others that I'd forgotten I had needs of my own. At 64, I was finally discovering who I was, a woman who loved gardening, who enjoyed Sunday mornings with crosswords and coffee, who laughed at movies with a friend who expected nothing in return. Someone who deserved kindness, and someone strong enough to walk away from anything less. The phone rang again. Frank. "Hey Della, I just put some popcorn in. Still up for that movie?" I looked at my garden one last time, at the tomatoes I'd grown with my own hands, and smiled. "I'll be right down," I said. As I gathered my tools and stepped inside, I thought about the woman who'd walked out of that other house 8 months ago, broken, exhausted, terrified. She didn't know it then, but she'd saved my life. And now, finally, I was living it. Now I'm curious about you. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Have you ever gone through something similar? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. And if you'd like more, I've left 2 of the channel's most powerful stories on the screen. I promise they'll surprise you.